the land, shadowing with wings, which is beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, that sendeth ambassadors by the sea, even in vessels of reeds upon the waters. Go ye, swift messengers, to a nation tall and clean, to a people feared far and wide, a nation meeting out and treading down, whose land the rivers have divided.
Okay, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. A little problem there. All right. I'm continuing Isaiah chapter 47. All right. Read verse 1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Thank you. Sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstones and grind meal. Uncover thy locks, make bare the leg. Uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. As for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. Sit thou silent, and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. I was wroth with my people. I have polluted mine inheritance, and given them unto thy hand. Thou didst show them no mercy. Upon the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. And thou saidst, I should be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither didst remember the latter end of it. Therefore hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. But these two things shall come on thee in a moment, in one day. The loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection for the multitude of thy sorceries. For by thy sorceries were all nations deceived, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge it hath perverted thee. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. Therefore shall evil come upon thee, thou shalt not know from whence it riseth. And mischief shall fall upon thee, thou shalt not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Stand now with thine enchantments, and with thy multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be thou shalt be able to profit, if so be thou mayest prevail. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers and stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up, and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. Behold, they shall be as stubble, and the fire shall burn them. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to sit before it. Thus shalt they be unto thee with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter, none shall save thee. All right. So the amount of noise coming from my computer is really annoying me. And I don't know why it's suddenly doing that. Ah, that's a little better. Once the intensity's down. So this idea, now, of course, sitting in the dust is a very ancient sign of mourning. They would, like, for example, in the book of Revelation, when the merchants of the earth are distressed at the sight of the fall of Babylon, which, of course, I'm going to compare those two things because obviously they're, it's Babylon. We're talking about Babylon, and you can see the parallels with Revelation very clearly, and we'll make sure we point them out. But it says they cast dust on their heads, and they cried, weeping and wailing in Revelation about the merchants when they see the smoke of it burning. And they cry out, "Alas, alas, that great city, wherein was made rich all the headships in the sea, by reason of her costliness," So, virgin daughter of Babylon, she's called virgin because she's never been conquered. In that metaphorical sense, it's related to sex, but what it means is like she has not been like the daughter of, like, he used the same analogy when he talked about Israel being conquered. Virgin daughter, thou shalt be a virgin no more. And it's an apt analogy of conquest, etc., etc. Sit on the ground. This makes me think back to chapter 4, remember? Because the daughters of Zion are haughty and walk with stretched forth necks, and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, and making a tinkling with their feet. Actually, it's all right here. Sorry. The daughters of Zion. Actually, it's chapter 3 for the most part, but after 4 also, obviously. They're haughty, they walk with stretched forth necks, wanton eyes, walking and mincing. He will smite with a scab, he will take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments, their feet, the chains, the bracelets, etc., all the stuff. And her gates shall lament tomorrow, being desolate, she shall sit on the ground. And there's also, as part of that analogy, there's the filth that needs to be washed away of rape. She got herself raped. And that's a terrible thing to say sometimes. But, I don't consider it their fault. But the naivety and the lack of parental instruction often leads girls to places where they're taken advantage of, and their foolishness is brought to bear. It is, here's the thing. I often emphasize, in the old days, if a woman was dressed in a certain way, in court they could maybe say, oh, she was asking for it and all that, and people have rightly decried that as no excuse. Even if a woman is dressed like a prostitute, that's not an invitation to rape. Obviously, prostitutes don't want to be raped. You know what I mean? So, that's not an excuse. But it does explain some things, And knowing human nature and the evil that is out there. The idea that you would go forth into the world expecting other people to secure your safety. Meaning, I'm going to go out and present myself in a very sexualized way, and I'll expect all the men around me to honor my my personal space, my body integrity. I'm going to just expect that of everyone else. It's very naive, because in spite of there being punishments and it being wrong, people will do it anyways. I mean, the prohibition has never stopped anyone from doing something they really wanted to do. It never stopped people from drinking, and it doesn't stop rapists from raping. I mean, it's been illegal to rape all the time. And yes, there are cases that used to be kind of borderline, well, it's like, well, like date rape and stuff like that. Again, I'm not making excuses for the bad behaviors of men, but ladies, look out for yourselves. Like as a father, I consider it my duty to educate my daughter on what are the kind of situations I should avoid. If you put yourself in a certain situation, you're taking a risk. You're not asking to be raped, but you're risking it from an unscrupulous person, especially if you're someone you barely know, even people you do know sometimes. Being in the wrong situation can be very, very, and the thing is, you can say, oh, that's wrong, they shouldn't do it and all that, but, after it happens, all you can do is, try to punish them, but you can't go back. You gotta look out for yourself. You shouldn't go around expecting the world to take care of you, because it won't. The world has a tendency to chew people up and spit them out. She's no longer tender and delicate, because there is that delicacy of youth, the tenderness. She's very, and coming from the lack of experience. You know what I mean? It's also kind of foolish. I mean, tender and delicate. I made my daughter wrestle because, because weakness is not a virtue, even in a woman, in my opinion. Yeah, take the millstones and grind meal. Get to work. You're not something, that's the picture of, she's lounging on the couches. All I've got to do is be beautiful. And when you present yourself as a delicacy, tender and ready and ripe, don't be surprised if you continue to present yourself that way if you run into a predatory male who decides that he's ready to eat. And he'll gobble you up. Get it to work. And this part is not like, that would be a good thing in my opinion, but it's really talking about, I think you're going into slavery. You're not going to be lounging about tender and delicate, but no. Take the millstones and grind meal. Uncover thy locks. I'm not sure what the locks are, well, because I assume that means hair. Let's see what it says in, let's see what we find about that. I assume it means locks of hair, right? That's why I know, because the connection is a little weird. Uncover, a woman's veil is what it says here. So it means like it means uncover the locks, but actually literally it means remove the veil. Take back the veil. Because they would veil themselves. Women would hide themselves. So that's a wise thing. But also, here's the thing. I've always said this, that yes, there's something, in the modern age, women expose a lot of their flesh, constantly. Especially when you consider the fact that women wear pants. And now they don't just wear pants. It went from wear slacks to now women wear skin-tight exercise pants all the time. Some, and it seems like an odd thing to wear. Because you're basically, everything that a dress was supposed to cover up, it exposes all the shapes, everything except for the actual sex organs themselves. All the curves of a woman are laid on display, whatever. And, because the reason I say whatever is ultimately, having them covered, while in some ways good and wise, it doesn't truly, people know what's underneath. You know what I mean? And so, but from their perspective culturally, a woman would want to keep covered. They'd want to keep their privacy private. They don't want to have their beauty be coveted. You know, not that, not, you know, I mentioned that the legs and all that stuff. Not, not, not that they're exposing a lot of beauty, honestly, for the most part. A lot of the women walking around with skin-tight clothes on are exposing their poor health and their overweightness. And, it's like maybe you should cover that up, you know? Not that I think the girls who look great should be exposing themselves only or something like that. It's like modesty is something, let a woman be clothed with humility and modesty, because it's a good, virtuous thing for a woman to be humble about her beauty and not to be proudly displaying it. Not only can it be dangerous and foolish in a certain sense, but it's just poor taste. It's just poor taste. Here's the thing. I wouldn't go around with skin-tight pants on. And when I was a young man, the young lady said I had a nice butt. Right? I don't anymore. It's all old and flat. But even so, I mean, that's the women go around with their old flat butts too. Skin-tight pants. I don't know why. I wouldn't. Simply wouldn't. Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand that. It's like, don't understand. Humility is a better garment for you. Modesty is a better garment. Uncover the thigh. Oh, expose your thigh. Make the leg bare. Pass over the rivers. That's probably referring to pass ye out of Babylon over the rivers, Tigris and Euphrates, into Persia, into captivity for Babylon. But there's a dual meaning, obviously. I think it's some sort of sexual connotation. It's when it talks about, in the next chapter, it says, here we go. It says, first verse, hear this, O house of Jacob, which is called by the name of Israel, and come forth out of the waters of Judah. You know what I mean? What's that mean? I mean, the people, the waters are symbolic of people. Okay, I guess so. I mean, that's true. But I always thought that there was something about this that was like, the rivers are what? The places where things flow. And thy nakedness shall be uncovered. That is a direct, when you uncover a woman's nakedness, it means to have intercourse with her. As far as in many contexts. Now, it could just mean shame also, exposure. But, let me show you. Nakedness. Uncover. There's a whole, section in the law, Leviticus. Here, I'll just bring this up. Yeah, just that. There. So on the right here, I have some, So it talks about not approaching anyone that is near of kin to uncover their nakedness. It means to have sexual relations with the near of kin. And it goes pretty clear. The son's daughter or the daughter's daughter, even the nakedness of grandchildren, thy father's wife's daughter. That means stepsisters. Oh, no. Well, half. Yeah. Half brothers and sisters, verse 11, are also forbidden, etc., etc. And then also aunts are forbidden. But first cousins are not, I think, as far as that. And even in our today's society, second cousins are not considered near enough kin to be incest. Though I couldn't imagine even remotely thinking of dating a cousin. I have a lot of second and third cousins, and I just grew up with them. And to me, that's just like, it's just because it's like having a friend. People don't your friendship is sort of like a special thing, and it's like you don't want it to change with the introduction of things like romance and all that. So there's a lot of reasons why you were not to uncover someone's nakedness. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of a woman and her daughter. You shouldn't. Neither shalt thou take her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter to uncover nakedness, for they are near kinswoman is wickedness. Yeah. You can't take, again, taking like a mother and a daughter, again, is also pretty wicked, etc., etc. It mentions all kinds of other things. But so uncovering the nakedness is a sexual reference. But also refers to being generally exposed and, well, because the fact is he's speaking to the nation as a whole. It's speaking to sort of a national rape. In fact, I have a DVD called The Rape of Nanking. And, and it talks about how the Japanese came through China and absolutely just slaughtered the men, raped the women, raped and slaughtered the women. They'd rape them and kill them, very brutally in World War II. In very barbaric fashion, quite frankly. And to this day, they don't like to acknowledge it. And I understand why they wouldn't want to, but mostly because it's like you're looking at your, like no one wants to say, oh, my grandfather was horrible. You know what I mean? But the truth is, your grandfather probably wasn't one of those people because many of those died in the war. Even so. So the idea of a people being conquered being a sort of a symbolic rape is not unusual. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance. I will not meet thee as a man. I wonder what that means in that context. You know what I mean? Like in the last one in the chapter, right, it said, I talked about the verse where it says, quit you like men. And then, what had it said in 46? Oh, yeah, show yourselves men. Remember this and show yourself a man. Who does this? God does all these things. So here it says, I will not meet you as a man. I wonder what that says. Now, that's a good example of, like, I'd like to look at a thought-for-thought translation there, like the NIV. What would they say was the intent of Isaiah in saying that? Because it could be some sort of figure of speech that I'm not aware of. Like I said, I joke about the NIV being the devil's translation because I know some people are King James only, and I love the King James, but I'm not King James only. That seems a bit too much. Because the King James is not the greatest translation in the world. Well, maybe it is, honestly. But it may be the greatest translation in the world, but it's still not perfect. That's what I would say. Even the greatest translation is not perfect. I don't want to throw shade at the King James. Not generally. I will spare no one. Interesting. I will not meet thee as a man. I will spare no one. That's a very different, isn't it? What's the NLT, the New Living Translation, which is like the Living Bible light. Light on the paraphrasing. I will take vengeance against you without pity. I will not meet you a man is somehow no pity. And when they say, no, I will spare no one. So I got to look at the Hebrew a little here and see if it's just a bad translation. I will not meet, to encounter, to reach. And the word here is Adam, not Ish. Like we talked about, be men is like the word Ish. Because we don't have the multiple words for men that would sort of have the connotation that Ish has towards man's higher nature, towards the better things of men, to the virtues of men. Because that's what Ish speaks of man and his upright qualities. Like be a man, because there's a positive sense in which, the Lord is as a mighty man of war. There are things to which God compares himself that are human. They're not everything that is human is despised, in other words. That which is human is also can be good because it is a reflection of the divine. So men have qualities that are worth praising and calling manly. And that's no slam against women. It just, women have their own virtues too that the men may not exemplify quite as well. So I will not meet thee as a man must be then some sort of figure of speech. The word meet, it says here, is paga, to meet or encounter or reach. Nothing about mercy. And the word here is Adam, man or mankind. I will take vengeance. I will not reach man. Maybe it has that sense of like, it will be inhuman. And so they, in order to paraphrase that delicately, the NIV, the NLT, the New King. What did the New King James do with that? This is when they tried to fix the King James and they ruined it. I can't stomach the New King James. I will not arbitrate with a man. I kind of like that, actually. I generally think it's horrible, but meaning I will, come and bargain with a guy. I will not reach a man. I won't bargain. The thing is, they had words for bargain, but like I said, it might be some sort of idiom or an idiomatic expression that I won't get to man. Like I said, to me, it's like, if it's not quite human, maybe that means inhuman. Maybe that's why the NIV thought no mercy. Why the NLT was whatever it said, I forgot. New American Standard. I don't know what all those other translations are. Well, I know the American Standard. Okay. I will not spare anyone. And it's anyone because it means Adam in the sense of humankind. Well, I don't know. So those are several possibilities. I don't need to have a full, sometimes it's just enough to explore the shades of meaning. And then you get the sense that's like, okay, by the context, lost my right arm pillow. I have a shoulder and joint issues, and this is hurting. All right, 247, verse 2. The shame shall be seen. It's a shame to be exposed and naked. Some people, here's the thing, people will expose themselves and be naked. I heard recently, whatever. But people do that occasionally. Women will show their breasts in public, right? As a something or other, right? But it's different. It's funny because what people will do of their own will, it's like I discovered in school that I didn't like being laughed at. If I made them laugh by my will, if I told a joke and did something funny and made them laugh, it felt powerful. But if I screwed up and did something I did not intend to, and it caused people to laugh at me and my foolishness or my folly or my lack of competence, it was humiliating, and I didn't like it. Same thing with nakedness. It's like, yeah, sure. Maybe you're all brave to show yourself, appear naked in public. I could do that. I'm not particularly self-conscious in the physical sense. I mean, like if I wanted to, if I did it on my own, I would accept it. But when someone just strips you bare unexpectedly, let's say you're just having a time out at the store or whatever, you're doing something, and the group of people just descends on you and strips your clothes away. That's embarrassing, to be exposed against your will. Having your shame seen, your very private parts exposed. So I will not meet thee as a man. Well, like I said, I will. There's a sense of no mercy, of no humanity. In the sense of like, what about the humanity? Like, spare, have mercy. God does not always have mercy. We know this. It's just written into reality. Not every, while I am the beneficiary of general mercy from God, it rains on the just and the unjust, and sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. And as Job says, I accept good from the Lord. Shall I not also accept the evil? God, all the good he gave me, I accept. Oh, thank you, God. And what about the misfortune that comes my way? Thank you, God. That should be the attitude. Because especially if we have faith to know that all things are working together for good for those who love God, for those who are called according to his purposes. That whatever misfortune has come my way, I try to see it as something that's ultimately for my good. But as someone who's was an athlete and I've trained athletes, I also know that the things you go through for good can be extremely trying. And when you're in the midst of them, it can be hard to see the good that it's doing. All you can tell is the misery that's in your immediate surroundings. I think of that. Sometimes when I have a miserable moment or hours or day, when I'm in misery, I think on the things the Lord suffered. And I console myself in the fact that I do know the Lord is looking out for me ultimately. And that the suffering I go through is just part of what he has ordained for my life. And even though it's not, at times, it's not what I would choose for myself in this moment. I chose, God offered me life. And I said, yes. He offered me service. I said, yes, Lord. I will serve. Whatever. He offered me service. I said, I will serve. I think before the offer was made. At least before I recognized there was an offer. Oh, yes, let me serve. Not knowing what that could entail. Serving God can entail many things. But it does not always, it rarely ever means living tender and delicately all your days. Though some people seem to think that's the case, That's why, when I identify Babylon in the book of Revelation, Babylon is the apostate church. And it makes sense in many ways. Our generation is set up perfectly for this, honestly, because it's terrible. It's terrible truth. The reason we love the rapture so much in our civilization, in our culture, in the Christian culture of the West, is because we're used to living tender and delicately. We're used to living in comfort with all the conveniences, When our washer stopped working, it was time to get a new one. When the dryer stopped working, I needed to get a new one. Because we were so dependent on that, in my house especially, because there's just so much laundry. And so, we are used to these conveniences and to filling ourselves. When I talked about the unshapely bodies of people going around in tight clothing, it's because we have an obesity epidemic. You know what I mean? It's weird to me because it's like to see so much people so much exposed. I remember when overweight, many people, and still do, try to conceal it a little, right? I look at clothes and I say, does this clothes make me look heavier or lighter? I don't want to look heavy. I don't want to look as heavy as I genuinely am. Not that I'm that heavy, but it's like, but I'm or that overweight. Whenever I've become so overweight that I was ashamed, I immediately set to work turning that around. And it can be very difficult for people. I understand. Like a lot of things, it's, I'm glad I struggle with it a little so that I could be somewhat sympathetic. Like if I was one of those people, I know people who just, they have a very moderate appetite and they respond very well to exercise. So a very moderate amount of exercise and just their normal diet, they're able to stay thin. And it's partly to do with their makeup as a human being, their genetics and all that stuff. Even so, that doesn't mean we aren't to take on the challenges of our life. And our job as Christians is not to just live delicately. And they have this portrayal. The bride of Christ is supposed to be the church. But ultimately, from the book of Revelation, we know there's an apostasy. And from what it seems to me is that many of the churches have their candlesticks removed out of their place and they become something else. The great whore. And she says things that are very familiar when we look at this chapter 47, right? And we'll get to that in a minute. I will take vengeance for our Redeemer. To me belongeth vengeance, saith the Lord. People don't like the idea of God taking vengeance or punishing sin. What business is it of his? Because all reality belongs to God. And it is he considers it his responsibility to take what he has done and take an interest in it. You know what I mean? People often struggle with the idea of evil. I remember someone was talking recently. I listened to someone saying like they want to believe in God, but the hardest question for them has been children dying and things like the Holocaust. And for me, it was easy. I'm like, well, the first Holocaust in recorded history was the flood of Noah, and that God himself did that, and that was a punishment for sin. Now, I'm not saying that the Holocaust is a punishment for sin, but our lives that we live are a gift, and we must return them. Dust we are, and to dust we return. And we may think, we should live longer. Yeah, I've been alive 47 years. I'd like to live to be 90 or 100. However old my wife's going to be, I want to be her husband all the way down to the end. Right? But I'm not actually entitled to all that time. Like the idea that I'm entitled to it, that it's somehow right for me to occupy that space for all my life. What have I done in my lifetime to earn that? To earn that time. Sometimes we feel like we work hard and then we earn some time off. We say, I've worked, I've saved, and now I've earned time off. You deserve some time off, right? I deserve some rest and relaxation, some luxury, and I need to be pampered and all that. People think like that. But that's not a reality. That's just a subjective perception. It's just you having mercy on yourself. But nobody, it doesn't justify people taking life by any means. But when we lose our lives, pointing the finger at God makes no sense to me. Because God gave us life, and it's not something we have by right, but it's given. I mean, it's like I'm not sitting, before I was born, I wasn't sitting in a waiting room saying, when are you going to give me a life, God? You know what I mean? Like I deserve to exist. I need to come into being. I need to come into being. Oh, yes, sir. Of course. That would be justice. That would be justice to bring me to life. But that's nonsense. I didn't need to be born. And therefore, I don't need to live even another minute. As far as justified in the sight of God, is God somehow implicated in my early demise? Is it if a stone fell from the sky and crushed me right now, coming at the speed of sound, didn't even notice it. Would God be evil for that? Because he let that happen to me? Of all people, me? And that's not how people feel. They feel like they're just innocent people going about their lives. And then wicked people come and take them and kill them. And it's terrible and it's wrong. But God is not implicated. Because that which he gives is already it is promised that it would be taken away. Like God promised to kill us all. He promised. That's from the promise of Eden. Has never been failing. The dust thou art, and to dust thou shalt return. Everything you think you have is a lie. Jesus said, to him that hath, the more shall be given, and he shall have greater abundance. This is from Luke. For to him that hath not shall be taken even that which he seems to have. The things you seem to have are your life, your liberty, your pursuit of happiness. I seem to have those things. They can be taken away by God. Now, that doesn't mean men have any right to take them. And the men who take them are evil. And also often do themselves for punishment, such as what happened with the Assyrians, such as what happens to Babylon. And the Persians don't last forever. They eventually become overrun by the Greeks. Man does not get a claim. We have no right to accuse God of unrighteousness because of the evil that befalls us in this world. Coming into the world, there is nothing but a promise that evil shall befall you. You know what I mean? How it befalls you is not disclosed, but it will befall you. You will die. We often don't expect to die as children or young adults. And as a human being, I'm 47, so I look back at people who die younger than me, I say that's tragedy. Because if I were to be, and say well, it's only just. What about me then? And I have to admit, yeah, me too. But God in his mercy has not slain me. So the Holocaust is not a question of God doing evil to anybody, but refusing to give any mercy. Which is, to some people, that's quite awful. He was not merciful. He did not deliver them. You know what I mean? He allowed it to happen. Not just allowed, but ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, as it says, I did it. As the Old Testament says, haven't you known from of old that I did it? I'm not going to go back and read it. You remember. I did it. So yeah, God does it. As for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. So it throws it in there. Remember last chapter they've been talking about the idols not being able to deliver. And I think that's why they mention the Lord right here in this verse that seems almost parenthetical. Like it doesn't seem... He goes... It's like the Lord is speaking to Babylon, and then suddenly Isaiah interjects us. Like, as for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is name, the Holy One of Israel. And then it seems it goes back to God speaking to Babylon. Sit thou silent, get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans. Did I mention that the Lord of hosts means Lord of armies? So, because he brings about armies and he brings about war. And he determines the victors and the losers. Sit thou silent, get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans. Excuse me? Thou shalt no more be called the Lady of the Kingdoms. See, a lot of these things, it's like the whole point we're supposed to understand by the New Testament is that we can't do anything about our sins and we can't redeem ourselves or save ourselves. We're helpless. We need a Savior. We need a Redeemer. We have to look to the Redeemer, to the one who can save us, to the one who can deliver us from the bondage that is our corruption. Yeah, God created corrupt human beings. That's another thing. We're corrupt human beings who deserve to die. And sometimes we die earlier than we like, or we die later than we like. I mean, it's a tragedy. There's all the children and the women that were executed in the Holocaust, millions. We abort millions of children in this country. All that potential, all that life wasted. They didn't even see the light of the sun. And you talk to me about a 10-year-old? God, my 10-year-old has lived such a full life and I want him to live a long one. But God, be merciful. All I can ask is the mercy. And, and if we are attentive to our Lord, we'll have it. At least let me see them again in the resurrection, Lord. And we grow attached to each other. We human beings have empathy for other human beings. Sometimes even for animals. I have a lot of empathy for animals. Sometimes I smush bugs, but sometimes I feel sorry for them. Depends on the bug. Kind of bug, Like, I'm not the type of person who would crush a pill bug, even though they're not bugs. But they're like bugs, right? It's harmless. We just kill some people hate earwigs, but they're harmless. Spiders, I don't like to kill spiders, even though I think I got one of them bit me on the face last night. Even so, we have even greater empathy for our fellow humans. We should anyways. We should empathize with all other humans. But usually we just empathize with the ones close to us. Or the one, and also we have a built-in empathy, most people, towards children. They're constructed in such a way as to engage us in the empathetic response. That's part of nature. Because we're created that way so that we do take care of them. If we didn't have empathy for them, we'd probably be like, you're a pain, we're leaving you. And it's not, human beings have sacrificed children, their own children, to further their own lives. Because that's the point of child sacrifice. It's like, it's to further my life. I even saw that I remember I mentioned this in a study once that, there was a actress who was crediting her success due to her young life getting an abortion, which made her able to pursue if she'd been saddled with a child, she could never have had the career. If that isn't an obvious example of child sacrifice to obtain greater power and wealth, I don't know what it is. And the thing is, the person doing the sacrifice doesn't necessarily know they're sacrificing something. Because you know why? They don't feel like they're losing anything. They don't consider all that person is losing. Everything, like, you take away everything they have and everything they'll ever get, everything they'll ever be. You steal it from them when you destroy their lives. You don't just steal it, you just erase it, because it's not like you get it instead. Sit thou silent. Get thee into darkness, O daughter of Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the lady of kingdoms. I sit a queen and am no widow and shall see no sorrow, Babylon says in the book of Revelation. Get thee into darkness. It also makes me think of, like, they will hide themselves in the dens and the rocks. Hide yourself is the implication here. But before she had lounged and been, look at me, I'm the greatest. I was wroth with my people, I have polluted mine inheritance, and given them into thine hand. Thou didst show them no mercy. Upon the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. He said, I was wroth with my people, and I gave them into captivity to you, Babylon. But you didn't, and you were unmerciful. Like the Egyptians will I give into the hand of a cruel Lord, it says in chapter 1. Sometimes the Lord gives in punishment people over to the merciless. That doesn't mean that the merciless, like I said, it's no excuse. Just because the woman goes walking down a dark city street in skimpy clothing late at night doesn't mean she deserves to be raped. But she's increasing the probability, especially if depending on where that dark city street is. What kind of neighborhood is it? Is it a place where rapes have occurred before? Is there a rapist running around? You know? Even so, it doesn't release the person from the responsibility of their actions. God sent the Babylonians against his people, and it says, but you showed them no mercy. As if he expected them to. Well, not that he expected it, but that would have been right. And if they had shown mercy, it would be different. But they were merciless. And so for their lack of, and I do see this also in the book of Revelation. The 2 witnesses will be slain, in the streets of the great city, which is, also called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified, Jerusalem. They are slain, and the whole people of the earth rejoice. You can bet the great whore will rejoice. It says, in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. All the righteous blood. In her is found all this blood of all the evil she's done to the servants of God and to the innocent, relatively innocent, Because we talk about the innocence of children, we mean the relative innocence of children. Children aren't totally innocent. I wasn't an innocent child. I was naive and in some ways innocent because I didn't know things. But very quickly, as I knew things, my corruption manifested itself. As I became, as I grew in the world, even from an early age, I've seen movies of myself as a 2-year-old. I was an angry little 2-year-old. Angry, stubborn, and I don't know what the other thing would be called. Stubborn. I don't know. Probably selfish, People become and are selfish very quickly in life. I polluted mine and hair. I gave them over. Now, the 2 witnesses aren't necessarily given over to Babylon because of their sins or because he wants to pollute them in any sense. But the spirit of Babylon will overtake the church. And there will be a great apostasy. Now, not an apostasy of true believers, because I don't think such a thing is possible. But it is an apostasy of the nominal and those whom God rejects. You know what I mean? Like those who are going through the motions, or there's a lot of people who believe that. I see it in you look at guys like Jordan Peterson and some of these other people, and they're very sincere in their advocacy for religion. They think it serves an important purpose. Because some people, there's 2 kinds of reformers. I was listening to someone talk about this, and this is a good point. There's a kind who will look at, it's called Chesterton's fence. They look at a fence and they say, I don't know why that's there, get rid of it. And another kind of reformer will look at that and say, until we know exactly why that fence was put there, we're not touching it. You got to figure out why something is there in the first place before you destroy it. Some people want to just destroy religion because they don't like it. They don't have an idea why it exists. Other people, like the Petersons and the other intellectuals who value religion, will value and say, this is good for society. Right? This is good for society. For people to pursue these things and to be sort of enmeshed in this relationship with God and trying to live up to a Christian ideal is positive for the world. It's not something that should be just tossed aside in favor of hedonism, obviously. But the thing is, that kind of faith is not going to be enough to shield you from what's coming. That kind of and perhaps if they're truly of the moral integrity that they lay claim to, they may also recognize the Antichrist as evil. You know what I mean? Or will they be more practical and think here we have a perfect God but they've not learned the true lessons of religion. Revelation already shows us what that Antichrist will be like. All shall worship me, you know? It's funny because he will exalt himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sits in the temple of God, making a show that he is God. He's going to act like he's God, and the world's going to go after it. They're going to swallow it hook, line, and sinker. That's Antichrist. And if you know anything about religion in the Bible, you'd know that was evil. But I wonder if they won't just see the practicality of, look at everyone, just like with the pandemic, just everyone do what you're told. Everyone go in the same direction. Everyone do what you're supposed to do. I want to see where their independence of thought or where their lack of true faith gets them in that trouble. You can't, because God, you have to have a real relationship with God. You can't just go through the motions. You can't just say like, yeah, well, I believe in religion. It's a good thing. I'll participate because it's positive for society. It's not going to help you. That's not the level of conviction that delivers you from Mystery Babylon, from partaking in it, from becoming the great whore, from becoming the one whose nakedness is uncovered, from becoming that delicate lady seduced by flatteries, living in luxury, but in her is in her is all this corruption and evil and blood. He gave his people into the hands of Babylon, and it says, you showed them no mercy. On the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. You made the old people work heavily. You did. And, and it often is the fact that, trying times are especially hard on the elderly and the young. Troublesome times are always very heavy on the elderly and the young. You look at the pandemic, a lot of it was the fear of the old. The old people were afraid. And now they give us Joe Biden, who will destroy the future. Thanks. Selfish. They couldn't bravely face the disease. They had to go cow. I know a lot of older folks who were, different. But there is a lot of cowering in this generation. The fearful, the unbelieving, the abominable, and murderers, and fornicators, and sorcerers, and idolaters, and all liars, but especially the fearful. Mention them first. The fearful have their leg power. To be afraid is a sin. To be afraid, especially of the enemy. To be paralyzed by fear. To be, to be like, like it says, I knew you were an austere man, so I didn't want to mess up, so I took your talent and I hid it in the earth. And you said, I shall be a lady forever. I sit a queen and am no widow and shall see no sorrow. It says in Revelation. I'll be a lady forever. So you thought this would go on forever. And it makes you think also of America in the our prosperity. We don't see what we've just done yet and the horrors we're about to visit on the world because of the foolishness of the past year. Everyone's in denial still. I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong. I'd love to the gas prices just kind of top off, maybe at $3.50, whatever. Something we can all adjust to, I guess. It's not great, but it's like something. I don't know. It's probably, I live in an area where gas is kind of cheap, so it must be even more expensive in other places. God, I can only imagine what they're paying in California. I like to think all those things are going to just sort themselves out. Everything will be all right. Maybe it will. I don't know what I'm talking about, right? Because that's based on looking at the newspaper. I'm not saying the scripture's saying we're in trouble, but I do think we are. There's no good can come from cowering in fear. The crouching, cowering response we had in the face of the pandemic, which should have been, look, everyone keep going about your daily life except for the vulnerable you know, we strongly encourage people to wear masks. We should never have mandated it, because that's my whole objection. Let people decide for themselves what level of safety they want to have, and they're willing to do for other people either. Because it's like, you always have the option of maintain. The thing is, it's like, for the most part, I don't get within 6 feet of people. I don't crowd people. Even so, is that really... In public, it's not such a big deal. It's in closed spaces. When I caught COVID-19, I caught it at home. Well, the first time, the suspected first case I had, which was before it was supposed to be even going in the population, actually that was, I think, at a wrestling tournament, which is another crowded, very crowded, people breathing and yelling on each other. I mean, I always get sick in wrestling season, and it's a normal part of it. You know, I get germs. I'm looking forward to going back. I'm looking forward to getting sick again. I think I have a right to get sick if I want to. And if people don't want to get sick, they need to stay home and stay out of the public. That's all it is. If you want to stay home and be cowering, and don't make us all cower with you, you coward. You know? Don't make the rest of us suffer with your foolishness and fear. That's what annoys me, is that the few it's not the few cowards, it's especially, well, there's the cowards, there's tons of cowards, not a few. But also it's these people in power who think they're, who are unelected, who just tell us, you know, no Christmas this year. I want to use a bit of profanity in response to that, you know? You can use your imagination. What I think, the kind of profanity I would espouse against someone who says they think they can give us permission to or not to celebrate Christmas. You know, I'll curse them instead. Go to hell. Go to hell. Bless you. I don't know. I just can't do it. Lord Jesus, forgive me. But these enemies, at some point there's a time for blessing, and there's a time to cease. And sometimes telling someone that their foolishness can be the best thing you do for them, but usually it's not. You know, if you tell someone like, "Oh, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about," that's not going to convince them. You know, the berating them into compliance, just like with the vaccines, them trying to get people to be vaccinated, and by making fun of them and calling people who don't get vaccinated stupid, that hasn't yet convinced a single person to go get vaccinated. I'll tell you that. You know what I mean? What would convince people of maybe if they backed off on trying to force us. You know, like if I want to make my dog take a pill, I can like force it, or I can coerce it, or I can find a way to trick them to do it of their own choice. You know, and that's the wisest course, is to get people to want to do it on their own. You know, what they should have done is never made it free. Should have made people pay for the vaccine. And then people would be clamoring to get it. You know? They could subsidize it, whatever. I don't think people should get it. That's my opinion. You should talk to your doctor. You should, actually, because some people are at risk. They're not giving it right, you know. I would definitely be very careful, because I wouldn't want to get hurt for man's stupidity, and I wouldn't want to fold against something I knew was wrong. You know, just to what? Just to please men? Just to go along with the crowd? I confess that I've always been, you know, some people say, they said, "Are you just contrary to be contrary?" I think that's kind of insulting, because I'm not like that. But I know why some people think I am, or why I'm portrayed that way, but it's like, yeah, there may be some truth in that. If I see a bunch of people running one direction, I go the other. You know, everyone starts growing beards, so I decide it's time to start shaving. You know, everyone's taking their kids out of public school. I decide it's time to send one of mine in. I do. Sometimes I do revel in being contrary, because my assertion is that people are going the wrong way at the wrong times. I'm not saying you need to put your kids in public school right now. I'm not saying that. That's something I'm doing. I've been homeschooling for over 20 years. Well, for about 20 years. And then 19, okay? For almost 20 years. That's a good one. That's the closest to the real. For almost 20 years. Don't give up on it if you've just been doing it a little while. I sent something into school with the thought of, I'm already kind of done with them. This is high school level, so, I don't feel like I have to have a further, I feel like, I have enough trust in belief in my own instruction that I don't feel any qualms about that at all. Because I'm not sending an unshaped, I'm not sending an unshaped child into the hands of strangers. It's another thing, you send someone who's virtually formed. I'm virtually completed, and now they just need new challenges. That's different. All right. And again, like I said about America, we think we're going to have pleasures forever. We're going to have ease forever. It's going to be easy forever. Wow, we're at an hour and 5 minutes. Whatever, I guess we're done. But they think it's the pleasure train will never end. The gravy train will never end. There's always going to be never-ending prosperity, never-ending happiness. If it weren't for the human factor, I think you could make a system of economics and all that would just continue to grow. That's called libertarianism. But nobody has the patience for it. And also it leaves a bit of, there's always some human wreckage on the side. And people don't have the confidence in human decency to think that people will charitably look after them, because historically people have not. Problem is the poor are too proud and the rich are too busy. And so people fall through the cracks, I guess. So our society has other things in it besides prosperity. But also, I think it's just human beings by nature, we mess things up. That's why it's impossible for us to have never-ending growth, because we are corrupt and we corrupt things. Because we corrupt our government, we corrupt our financial systems, we corrupt everything because of the corruption that's inherent in the system. That's why we can't have perpetual growth. The wicked cannot keep growing. God won't allow it. That's why the Tower of Babel story exists, because they can't just keep building. They don't know that living this luxuriant lifestyle, there's a price to pay in the end. There is a latter end. All right, so we'll begin at verse 8. We're going to be talking about the same things. Thanks for joining us today. We'll be back again tomorrow to continue in Isaiah 47. That really is an hour. Okay. I never looked at the clock once the whole time. So I didn't know.
Shadowing
with wings,
which is beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, that sendeth ambassadors by the sea, even in vessels of reeds upon the waters. Woe, in vessels of reeds upon the waters. Go ye swift messengers to a nation tall and clean, to a people feared far and wide, a nation meeting out and treading down, whose land the rivers have divided.